the Sony XPERIA Mark III. This phone was announced in April 14, 2021 and is launching now. So is this the phone that's going to put Sony back on the map? That's what all the rumors say, and that's what we're going to discuss today. Ladies and gentlemen, I've split this review into 3 sections. I'm going to talk about the design, then the specs, and then the user experience. Let's begin with the design. Overall, it has a modest, high-quality look without being flashy. The matte finish on the back and the sides gives it a nice grip, and it feels nice and weighty in your hand. The long shape of this phone means you can use it with one hand. I can reach the keys here with my thumb, and it makes life a lot easier. And my hands are not even that big, so. The bezels on this phone are not too thick and not too thin either. I think they're just right. On the back, you'll see this camera bump, which is impressively small considering how many cameras they squeezed into there. And on the sides here, you'll notice a lot more buttons than usual. Besides the volume button and the power button, there's also a dedicated Google Assistant button and a camera shutter release button. And on the top here, you'll notice a headphone jack, which is a rarity in flagship phones these days. And it makes me very happy because I have studio monitors, which I listen to my high quality audios with. Brief talk about design done. Let's talk about the specs. Starting with the most obvious, the display. The screen uses OLED technology, which gives excellent color accuracy and contrast. The contrast of the screen is great, but the brightness is not exceptional. You see, it gets washed out in direct sunlight just like most phones would. The aspect ratio is 21:9, so it's a proper widescreen. The screen is a 6.5 incher. The screen can run at 4K at 120 frames per second, which is excellent for gaming. Moving on to the next spec, the cameras. Number 1, I love this dedicated shutter button. This means I can take out my phone, turn it on and take a picture without having to go through menus or waiting for the phone to wake up. All the rear cameras, of which there are 3, are 12 megapixels, and I find these guys to be nice and sharp. They're also coated with size T, which reduces lens flares and haze, and they have HDR. The wide and the telephoto lenses have optical image stabilization, but the ultra-wide does not. But then again, stabilization on an ultra-wide lens is kind of overkill. And I'm sure you've read on the internet that it has 4 cameras, which it does, but the 4th one's not really a camera. It's more of a 3D sensor. It's 0.3 megapixels, and it just allows the phone to understand the 3D space in front of it, which means it can grab focus faster. But enough talk, so let's have a look at the picture from the ultra-wide. Here's a picture from the wide. And here's a picture from the telephoto lens. And also, let's check night performance while we're at it. Here's a picture from the telephoto. Here's a picture from the wide. And here's a picture from the ultra-wide. So as you can see, the colors are strong but muted. The dynamic range is quite good. I am noticing that the telephoto lens is a little bit soft though. And for those of us who are into photography, there's also a fully manual mode for controlling the camera. You can control the ISO, the shutter speed, the white balance, but you can't control the aperture because it's a phone camera and the aperture is fixed. Moving on to the video modes, the main camera can do 4K at 120 frames per second, which is actually quite impressive. Moving on to the video tests, as you can see here, the image stabilization is quite decent. It's taking out the shakes from me walking around, and the colors and the dynamic range are as you can see here. Moving on to the selfie camera. This is an 8 megapixel sensor, which also does HDR. It has face tracking and it is very, very clear. As you can see from the picture quality, the dynamic range is quite decent. And talking to the phone or doing video calls does not look like it's shot on a potato. Let's talk about what's under the hood, the chipset and the memory. Starting with the beast under the hood, the Snapdragon 888 processor, which is paired with 12 gigs of RAM. The Snapdragon 888 is literally the best processor you can get for an Android phone, which is great for gamers because paired with 12 gigs of RAM, it'll run basically anything you ever need to run on a phone. Storage-wise, this guy comes with 512 gigs of memory, which is expandable by another terabyte using this really cool little SD card and SIM tray. At first, this storage amount might seem like way too much, but when you consider that this guy shoots 4K at 60 frames per second, you'll realize that all that video is going to take up a lot of space. You may have heard that there's a 256 gig version of this phone. This won't be available in most countries until sometime in September, but Expanses will have it in early August. One thing I quite like about this phone is the SIM tray does not need any tools to take out. This can take 2 SIM cards or 1 SIM card and a memory card. It's waterproof with this little rubber lining, and overall I think it's just a really clever little piece of innovation. Communications wise, this phone comes with 5G, LTE, 4G and what have you, so you will be well connected anyways. All right, let's have a test of the speakers.
You need to face your fears. Come with me. You need to be ready.
Dun, 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 dun. The loudness is quite average, and I'm noticing that there's very little bass at full volume. All right, seemingly Sony noticed this, and they put in this little feature where you can turn the phone's vibration motor on whenever the bass kicks in. This doesn't do anything for bass. It just vibrates your phone, and I have left it off completely. I can see it being useful for people who play games though, because then you can, feel the gunshots or feel when someone's moving around because the bass sounds. But other than that, that feature is not really useful for me. Speaking of the audio quality of this jack, it's actually quite clear, but I do wish that the amp was a little bit more powerful because my headphones require kind of a strong amp. On another note, the USB-C does do OTG, so you can plug your amp right into here. You should be fine. Moving on to the last section of our review, the user experience. Because what's the point of having good specs if the user experience sucks, right? So the number one thing to notice here, there's no bloatware. This one thing makes me so happy. There's no secondary signups. You don't have to sign up for a Huawei account or a Samsung account or a Xiaomi account. You just get the phone, you sign in with Google, and then you have a fully functional phone. I friggin' love that. But let's dig deeper into the UI. This looks and feels just like a stock Android with a couple of little touches of Sony on top. So speaking of Sony sprinkles, there's a thing here called Side Sense. So you double tap on this little bar and you can do split screen mode. This means I can send messages to my friends and watch YouTube at the same time. Or when you're trying to find where someone is and you're texting them and you look at the map at the same time, this tall screen really helps make the split screen feature work super well. You can also go into one-hand mode in case your hands are really small. You can look at notification, or you can just launch whatever apps you want. The phone also comes with a game enhancer. This little app will allow you to change the screen resolution, the refresh rates, the game performance. It has audio profiles, you can record your gameplay, and you can have another app on top of your game while you're playing. For example, if you're a streamer, you want to have streaming controls on top of your game, you can do that with this phone. It's pretty well optimized for gamers. Overall, I love how the user interface treats you like an adult. It teaches you how to use the phone slowly instead of trying to cram all the information in the first 10 minutes of you opening the phone. The explainers and the pop-ups that you do get for explaining things, they pop up once or twice and then they're gone. I think it's a lovely user experience because it's not intrusive. Here are my pros and cons about the Sony XPERIA 1 Mark III. The pros are the screen resolution and its shape, the camera, plus all the controls you get in it, plus the high-power processor. On the con side, there's almost no bass on the speakers, and the battery life is going to be limited to 1 day because of the high-power processor. In conclusion, I think this is a top-notch phone. The hardware is fantastic, but the thing that really excites me is the user experience. And I think it's the user experience which is going to put Sony back on the map. Everything about how this phone is put together is just logical and it makes sense. Overall, I think this phone is suitable for serious photographers because you don't carry your camera everywhere you go, but you will always bring your phone. And the camera controls in here are exactly what you're used to. At the same time, this phone is also for gamers. The hardware is speedy, the game enhancer keeps your games running smoothly, and you can even connect a DualShock controller to this guy. So if this phone sounds perfect for you, follow the first link in the description to get yourself one of these guys from the Expanse's online store. And if you found this video useful, please hit the thumbs up button and consider subscribing. Thank you for watching.